How to build and use components correctly. The key to building efficient models is by using groups and components for repeatable objects. Sometimes things do not need to be repeatable to justify making a component, however. You might want to separate out parts of a model so that they can be worked on independent of one another. Building a simple stair creates multiple faces and edges within a new file. See how you can select all the faces and edges independently within the file. Or you can select multiple faces and edges with the Select tool. Everything is separate faces and edges, all touching and interconnected. You do not need to make these faces into a group. In fact, you should not make them into a group. They are not going to be used separate from where they are in the current model, so leave them alone. They represent a stairway. When we click on the Save button or go to the File menu and select Save, it creates a SketchUp file containing these objects. By virtue of being in a file, the faces are a group of stuff, that is, the file contents. You do not and should not group them within their own file, because the file name itself makes them grouped when brought into another SketchUp file. When any SketchUp file is imported into any other SketchUp file, the file being imported becomes a component within the current file. Right context click on the stairway and select Edit Component to examine the contents of the stairway. Or you can double-click the Select tool on the stairway to edit the component also. See how you can select all the faces and edges independently within this component. Or you can select multiple faces and edges with the Select tool. Everything is separate faces and edges, all touching and interconnected. This geometry behaves just like it did when we were editing them in a separate file. Component or group editing within a larger model context is like opening up that component or group as a separate file. You can only edit and affect stuff that is within the current component context. You cannot hurt anything else in the larger model any more than you can hurt the contents of another file outside of your current model file when you're working in SketchUp. Okay, the stairway is a group of stuff we can move around as a unit within our building model. It's a special kind of group of stuff called a component. A component is a group of stuff that has a name and can be copied or placed multiple times within a file. Every instance of that component is just like every other instance of that component. They are always exactly alike. If you change one, they will all change. When you import a SketchUp model from outside the current model into the current model, the incoming model becomes a component and uses the outside file name as the inside component name. Let's say we want to put some handrails on our stairwell. I save the building file and open up the stairwell file. Draw the handrail using the Follow Me tool and a path for the circle to extrude along. At this point, nothing within the file is a group or component because we are not treating anything independent of anything else within the file. I want to make another handrail on the other side of the stairs. I can see that the handrails will be identical, so I first make a component within this file of the handrail and name it handrail. Notice I make sure that the checkbox Replace Selection with Components is checked. I don't make a component of the stairs because I'm not making a copy of the stairs. The stairs are the stairs by virtue of being within this file. My handrail is now a component within the component browser of this file. I can pick it from the component browser to place another handrail in the model, or I can simply make a copy of the handrail that's already in the model. Saving the stairwell file and opening up the building file, I see that the stairway has not been changed. There is no external reference link in SketchUp between files. Right now, The stairways in my building file are different from my stairway file outside of this building file on the computer hard drive. Two different stairways. Right context click on any stairway within the building model, or right context click on the stairway within the component browser and select Reload. Select the stairway file out on the computer drive in its folder. All stairways within the building file change to be identical, matching the contents of the stairway file out on the computer drive. Double-click on a stairway and draw a rectangle to create a lower landing pad as part of the stairway. All stairways now have a landing pad. Save the building file and open the stairway file. This stairway file does not have the landing pad. That's because this file is separate from the stairway contained in the building file. Open the building file and right context click on a stairway and select Save As. Select the stairway file out on the computer drive as the place to save as. Open the stairway file out on the computer drive. Now this stairway file contains the lower landing pad. Open the building model file. We need a short stairway. Draw a new short stairway. Let me show you what not to do. Do not do this. I select the short stairway and make a group of it to make it easy to select. I select the short stairway group of stuff and make a component of it named short stairway. Now edit the short stairway and see that I now need to edit the group of the short stairway inside the short stairway before I can actually change the short stairway. Do not do this. I'll undo back several times to before my short stairway mistake. To make this short stairway a component, you do not need to make a group of it first. Indeed, you shouldn't. When you select the faces and edges of the short stairway and make them into a component, that groups the stuff for the short stairway by virtue of becoming a component. See how I can now move it around as one item? See how when I double-click to edit the short stairway, I can immediately change the short stairway without having to edit within an edit. Let's look at another mistake I could make. Open up a new file and draw a short stairway. Now I select the geometry for the short stair and I make a component called short stair. Now I draw in a handrail and make a component handrail. And make a copy. Everything looks fine. So now I should save the file and call it short stair, right? No, absolutely not. When I do this, I will have a file named short stair that contains a component called short stair. When I import the file short stair into another file, every occurrence of short stair will count as two short stairs, not one. When I open the building file and import the short stair, SketchUp avoids this naming problem automatically by adding a # number after duplicate names to be able to differentiate items one from another. But when you try to run a report on a file like this, you see that there are twice as many short stairs reported as we want. And who knows which one is the correct short stair component? Indeed, in our current example, the short stair # one is actually the correct one to count, and not the one named simply short stair. One way to correct this situation, if it happens, is to edit the component in question and explode the nested item. Then purge unused components and the duplicate component name will be removed from the file. In our example, however, the name stays named with a #1 as part of the name. You now need to rename that. Finally, let's look at how applying colors interacts with components. When you paint a component or group, that color gets put over everything that is the component or group. Anything within the component that is the default color will accept the color and show it. Here, everything is colored red because everything within the stairway is the default color, the way we modeled it. If I paint one handrail blue, that part of the component definition will always be blue, regardless of what color I paint the entire stairway. Likewise, if I paint the other handrail. Here's an example where I do want to create a group of the base geometry of a component. To make all the stair risers a consistent color, I could paint each one the same color. But that gets tedious when I want to change that during design to another color. Let me back up and put the default color on all the risers. Now I select all the risers and make a group of them. Now when I want to change the color of the risers, all I need to do is edit the stairway and paint one thing to control the risers. Remember, I do not want to make the stairs all a group. They will simply be geometry that accepts whatever color I paint the stairway. Each instance of the stairway can be painted a different color because the paint is applied to the outside of the component. All risers in the file are identical because we painted within the component definition. To make one stair different from another, right context click on the component instance and select Make Unique. Now I can paint its risers different than all the other stairways.